This is Dr. Mike Gio, physical therapist. Hey, today we're going to be interviewing Dr. George Ackerman. We'll be back in a few seconds asking him who he is, what does he do. Okay, we'll be back in a few seconds. All right, we are back here at back here in Jerry Hab in my clinic, but we have a special guest for today. His name is Dr. George Ackerman. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, but he has a PhD and a JD. He's an attorney, right? And he's got an MBA and a Master of Science. And with that being said, he's an attorney and everything, but he is also afflicted, not him, but he has experience with Alzheimer's and dementia through his mom. And he's just changed his approach in life. And I was watching all his videos and everything, him being an attorney and his PhD and MBA, and now he's like advocating for Alzheimer's, and we kind of connected and everything. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in Dr. George Ackerman. Dr. George, what are you doing there? Where are you at? Can you please tell us who you are, what you do, and what are you doing in the world of Alzheimer's and dementia?
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate your time and your audience. It means the world to me. Unfortunately, my mother passed due to Parkinson's disease, and she had late onset dementia. So I'm really here for her and her memory for Parkinson's disease awareness. I advocate throughout the world, really, not just in the U.S., for a hope for a cure. And I really appreciate the time today, because unless we get everyone on board, it's going to be much further away from a cure. But with your help, your viewer support, just getting the word out there that we can end Parkinson's disease by, right now we're actually in history. Just last December, they passed the first bill in U.S. Congress in history, literally, to end Parkinson's disease. It's called the National Plan to End Parkinson's Disease. And this year, I'm hoping it'll go to the Senate. So you and your viewers can actually be a part of history and contact your senators and tell them to support this bill. So it's a lot of great things happening, but unfortunately, I'm here now because of a negative situation with my mother. She was my best friend, but we have to bring some positive light, and hopefully her memory will be remembered forever. So thank you again.
I know, right? I mean, I know we always hear this all the time. Everything happens for a reason, but sometimes when it happens to you, it's like, why me? Of all the people, why me? Why my mom? Why my dad? And but we always say, the challenges that we encounter are actually the bigger the challenge, the bigger the victory. And then the test that we've been going through is actually going to be a testimony someday. We might not know what's going on right now, but today is actually a real testimony for George, or for Dr. George. Should I call you Attorney George or Dr. George or what? And all these letters behind your name, man.
Called a lot. Usually it's either Dr. Ackerman, but I try and do a lot of this Sharon's son, George, because I feel I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for my mother's sacrifices throughout her life. So that's really what this is all about. I don't ask for, we don't want money. We really don't want anything, which is why sometimes I'm on shows or just meeting people on walks and for Parkinson's, and they're in shock that, we don't want anything, but we literally just want a cure. And the big message is really that no one is ever alone. So when I was caretaking for my mother, going through this disease and dementia and Parkinson's, I felt alone. So I decided, I don't want others to go through it. My family and my mother did. Obviously, sadly, we're too late for a cure for us, but we're not for so many others. So we started Together for Sharon.com. It's not an organization. It's just me, a son who loved his mother, and she was my best friend. And I don't want her to ever be forgotten because of a disease. If you pass, unfortunately, due to regular causes and, life, that's part of, life, but not when your life's taken like it was due to Parkinson. She was only a young 69 when she passed. And it wasn't just like a regular, thing. It was just horrible, the things she went through. I was there holding her hand the whole time, and I felt lost, ashamed, scared, very worried. I didn't know what to tell her when she wanted to know, is she going to be here for her grandkids, wedding and things. So again, out of a story of sadness comes a lot of hope. I've realized last year, I've been doing this about 4 years. She passed on 1/1/2020, but it's not just about my mother and my journey. It's about everybody. I've been honored and lucky enough now in the last 6 months to interview over 600 people myself around the world, from India to Africa to England, France, Spain, Italy, Iceland, Australia, you name it. And I was just shocked to find out there's over 10 million people around the world who have Parkinson's. There's 1 million in the US approximately, but it's the fastest neurodegenerative disease in the world. And that's something we have to think about. I can get it. Obviously, I'm optimistic, but we don't even know the real cause. But doing this today and taking a few moments with you just means the world to me and my family, and to so many out there.
Well, it's also my always my pleasure, George, and I really like, I'm gonna be honest and vulnerable. I'm actually a mama's boy. My mother passed away too already, and my dad too. My dad had MCI, mild cognitive impairment, and it's nice to hear from a man like you being vulnerable. Telling the people, the world, the podcast, YouTube, the groups that we have in Facebook, that we love our parents. And there are other kids there and family that they have family members, their mom and dad still alive, and they don't even care. You know what I mean? And here we are, our parents already passed away, and we're like passionate about, and we want their legacy to go on. And I really applaud you, George, for doing this. And I know you're a very busy man, and you do all this, being an attorney, teaching, people, teaching law school and stuff like that. So, how about tell me the experience that you've had in taking care of your mom. I mean, were you the primary caregiver? You had, your siblings helping you out. Tell me more about that experience there. How long did she, let's just say, I don't want to say the word suffer. How long did you take care of her at home, or where did you place her or something?
Yeah, my mother was a very independent person. Unfortunately, she was divorced, but she sacrificed again a lot of her life. She had a master's degree. She was a teacher, and she sacrificed it all to take care of my brother and I. She didn't really have. She had a lot of friends. She was very independent. She would drive. She could shop. She could do everything.
Wow.
She had Parkinson's for 15 years, but so until the last 4 years wasn't really life changing. Unfortunately, she went for a special trial, and I think they might have changed her medication too drastically. And that night I came home. So before that night, she had a little stiffness in her left arm, but not enough to, not live and, enjoy friends and family and things. But that night she came home from that study. And again, I'm not mad at the study or the doctors or they're just trying to help. I hate the disease. So we have to always make that clear. They tried to help, but I was called at 4 a.m. I'm also in law enforcement, police officer in reserve, and you get calls at 4 a.m. all the time, or these calls you go to things, but not so different. Getting a call that my mother is moving her furniture outside of her home because she was in fear that someone was going to harm her, and that's when we realized dementia had set in, and the
Mm.
delusions and hallucinations came, and those are things that you don't, as a son or anyone, you don't take courses. You can't take a course to be a caregiver. You might be able to now, but you're not prepared. So I was scared, shocked, didn't know what to do. Rushed to the hospital. They said we saved her life, but that was the point where all her health started declining for the next 4 years. She went from being able to walk many miles to the cane, then from the cane to the walker, then from the walker to the wheelchair, and then finally bedbound, unfortunately, at the end. So these are the things that you can't prepare for. But like I said earlier, I just felt very alone. I was the main person, the primary. My father was in New York, but again, they weren't together. She had a sister, but mainly I was the only one who was with her almost 24/7, even when I couldn't, because there was a point where now her stomach caused, the medicines caused stomach problems, like and so many other issues, from skin to even being able to speak, to walking, to losing very drastic amount of weight. And so we had to hire people to watch her throughout the night. We're spending about $12,000 a month just to have care. I don't
I
call them
believe you.
yeah, I don't call them caregivers, because they really didn't. They were just more like bodies to watch over. I didn't want her to fall. I had to
Hmm.
put video cameras everywhere because she was telling me they were harming her, but they weren't. It was just the dementia setting in. It was just like, felt like the game where you bop the little whack-a-mole thing. Every time I tried to think of a way to help, another thing popped up, and it was just overwhelming. And I look back and I wouldn't have changed anything, but it was definitely tough situation.
That's true. It is very tough, and like what you said, there's no class where they've never taught us in school how to be a caregiver. especially with our generation. I don't know how old you are, George, but our generation is like the sandwich generation. We got our older parents that we're taking, and then you got our kids. We're growing up, and then here we are in the middle of it. And again, if you're watching live, comment live. Watching on a replay, comment replay. Appreciate you. Hey, Tony, appreciate you for watching. Well, anyway, so and then you also mentioned about, I know I've been talking about Alzheimer's because we're streaming this in our Alzheimer's group. If you hear the phone, so just disregard it. So, but um, we're streaming this to Alzheimer's group, but George has been mentioning about the Parkinson's, and this is really his passion. But let me tell you about this, ladies and gentlemen. If you have Parkinson's, it could also lead and eventually will lead to dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term, and underneath that dementia, underneath that umbrella, is different types of diseases. All right, you got your Alzheimer's disease, you got your vascular dementia, you got the Crutchfield dementia, and then of course the Parkinson's type of dementia. So if you have Parkinson's, when you have Parkinson's, it affects your basal ganglia. And your basal ganglia is responsible for your alternating movement, your movement of your arms, the alternating movement of your legs. And eventually, as your basal ganglia is affected, your substantia nigra, I'm being medically technical here, but you also have to understand this, ladies and gentlemen, it affects your alternating movement, and to the point that you cannot alternate your movement in your hands, you cannot do alternating movement in your feet. That's why you develop festinating gait or shuffling gait. That's why they have to use a walker. So same thing with the swallowing. There's doing swallowing muscles, and it has to alternate to close towards the go to the lungs or go to the GI tract or the esophagus. And if it doesn't coordinate well, guess what? They swallow the food and goes to the pulmonary tract, and then they get aspiration pneumonia, and that's how it gets worse with Parkinson's disease. So, George, let's go back to you, George. So, when did you notice this? You mentioned that she underwent to a trial, or what you call this, what you call a trial, medical trial. Did she had like deep brain stimulation or medical trial, medication, pharmaceutical trial? So.
That's the one interesting thing is every person with Parkinson's is so different. That's why it's unique, but a problem for medical, the medical world. Everyone, just because one person has one thing doesn't mean the other is alike with Parkinson's. My mother had the dystonia with the curling of the toes. She had fibromyalgia, but she also had signs of more internal types of tremors. So she didn't have the external that you'll see individuals like Michael J. Fox, famous actor, has, and an incredible advocate. So everyone is so different, unique, but it's just something that is horrible. She had very healthy weight, and all of a sudden that year it just continued to decline. She got skinnier and skinnier and skinnier, and
Mm,
almost seeing anyone like that evaporate in front of your eyes is something that is tragic. So that's why, again, I do this because that's why I like, because of awareness, but I like speaking with you because I'm not a medical doctor. I always say to see your medical provider, maybe a movement specialist, but it's nice to have your take also on the background, more of the medical area. I could only talk about, as you also know, is the my own experiences with my mother and myself. But it's very important to stay in touch with your medical provider. There's a lot of things that we've learned now with research. 10 years ago, we didn't know how important exercise is, diet. They've done research. I do think, in my opinion, that she might have gotten it from pesticides. She had a nice home, but she had, termites, she had the mold, and we treated it, but who knows back then what they were using. So again, it's not scientific data, but there's a lot of research out there to stay away from those types of things.
yeah, that's true. That's true. You know what? Before before we got this, our 3 o'clock appointment today, I actually came from an actual physician. I
Mm.
interviewed her also in our little podcast, and she's a physician, and she has a cash-based practice here in Jackson, and she's finishing her degree in culinary medicine. And of course, she's a physician. Their tendency is to prescribe, medication. She's a medical doctor, prescribe medication. So now she's changing her practice to more culinary medicine,
Mm.
basically food. Food is medicine, right? And she's changing the game. And she not really insisted. She explained to me most of our diseases here, obviously here in the United States, are caused by the food that we eat, and which is actually true. And we may be able to eat right now, but the consistent eating of this let's just say sodium, 1500 of sodium or whatever a day, and it just causes different types of diseases. So you are correct. There's a lot of studies out there. You also mentioned earlier, George, about mom having delusion from dementia. So did she had all of this, or just instantly it went?
Yeah, that came towards the end, like the last 4 years, and it was also horrific because that same night, actually, I never mentioned, I took her to the hospital due to the changes in the medicine. I remember one of the saddest parts of my life ever. So I brought her to the hospital. I went back to get some of her clothes, and I found in her bedroom, surrounding the room, like almost a horror movie. Like, I try to keep this a little positive, but she had post-it notes like we have. I have them over there, and on each note was the name of animals and people. And she wrote who was actually there in reality and who wasn't, because at that point, because of the dementia, she wasn't sure who was real or not. I mean, she would tell me that there were animals there. Some were nice and friendly and funny, so we would laugh about it. But then the ones were her parents who were, deceased for decades. Those are kind of not funny. They're more, sad in a way. So not being able to understand or appreciate, your surroundings is something that is frightening. We tried everything from every type of therapy to chiropractors to
Mhm.
music therapy to animal therapy to anything you name it. But at some point, none of them, are able to work or help. So it's very a hopeless type feeling. The worst was when we had to go the last year into the hospice type program. And usually you go to
Mhm.
hospice for a few weeks, but we had a special one in Florida for a year. And the great thing with hospice in a way is they send medical nurses who will help guide us, because again, there's so many medicines and time, and I don't even know if the people followed it, but they would check on her. But the bad thing with that was they removed the ability to have physical therapy. And as you would know, you're the expert, when you take the ability to have physical therapy away from someone who's struggling, it'll break their heart. And because she kept trying to fight, at least in her mind, she wanted
Mhm.
to fight, keep working out, keep something, just so she thought she'd get better.
Yeah.
And we actually stripped that because, in a way, the therapist said she couldn't do it a lot at that point. But when she found out, that was kind of when she started to lose hope,
Mm.
because that was tough.
There you go. Well, I want to also correct you there too. A lot of people know, even me before, that when a patient goes to hospice, that they are no longer qualified to get physical therapy. Yes, they can. All right. They just have to find a therapist that's able to bill and apply a modifier. We have like probably like 3 or 4 patients right now in our caseload that are in hospice, and we're still providing therapy for them. And we have just to apply a modifier. I forgot what you call it, the GW modifier. You can actually, I mean, you're a lawyer, you can look it up, sir. But yes, you can. Most hospice agency won't even let me do it. But if I tell them, hey, you can apply this modifier, I bill it myself because we own a clinic here. But most of them, they don't know it.
Right.
Even physicians, they don't know it. But if you research it, maybe that could be an added thing for you to do for your many to-do list, Attorney George Ackerman, that you can advocate for hospice to understand the law, that they can and should provide physical therapy, at least palliative care, and comfort measures, because we can provide massage, we provide simple range of motion, bed positioning to make them feel comfortable, stuff like that. It doesn't have to be a full restorative program. Most of the therapist's mind, physical therapist, our mind is like restorative. A patient falls, break their hip, restorative therapy, stand them up and walk. It doesn't have to be like that. It's more like more palliative and taking care of them at home, massage, stretching, stuff like that. I like what you mentioned about the delusion part. I want to talk about that more. Remember, when the patient has Parkinson's, ladies and gentlemen,
I
if
think
you're
you're
watching
breaking up.
live, type in George and go to this website. Well, anyway, uh, when you have Parkinson's, you develop what you call the D's, the 3 D's. You get dementia, become delusional, you become dehydrated, and there's another D that I forgot. So when you get delusional, in the part in your brain, you got the front part, you got the temporal part, you got the occipital part. If that front part is affected, it affects your executive functioning. So when the person has Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or dementia, they become irritated. They don't have the executive functioning. If they it's if this temporal part, it's what's the temple close to your ears, right? And they have this, hearing hearing hallucination on hearing, and they will hear stuff. And if it's the back part, the occipital area, it will affect their vision, so they will see visual hallucination too. And that's what happened to Miss Sharon, Mrs. Ackerman, and she's seeing stuff. It's real to her. It may not be real to us. And speaking of that being real, if you have a patient like that right now and they're seeing stuff, you have to acknowledge it. You just cannot tell them, "Hey, there's no snake there," because in their mind and in their head, it's really real. You have to acknowledge it. So, anyway, let's go back to George. So, George, so after learning that, and now you've taken, what's the next step for your group? Together for sharing and stuff like that. I mean, I know you've interviewed Michael J. Fox. That's amazing. How did you reach out to him?
Yeah, I didn't interview him, but I did get an opportunity to speak to him, luckily. So it was actually out of nowhere. I'm very busy, like you are. And, I heard he was going to be in Orlando at a special, it was more like a comic type thing for
Mhm.
fans for Back to the Future. But I wanted to,
Wow.
always had a dream of meeting him. And I'm not into the comics and those things, but I am trying to bring awareness. And my dream was always in my opinion, one of my role models and an inspiration. He has a movie that came out last year. I don't know if you saw, but I think it was Touch maybe, but that's what the name of it. And the thing that he inspires so many is that when he had early onset Parkinson, so he was younger, like 30 around then. But a lot of individuals, even today, and I won't name names that I've reached out to, I don't know if they're ashamed or they just don't want to, in a way, come out. They don't want people to know. They don't want to lose their careers and jobs or friends. And it's sad because the only way we're going to fight this disease is if we have everyone as a family like you on board, like we're doing today. So he, spoke about that in his movie. He felt like he was worried, what will this person think? Well, he didn't care and he decided to fight it. So he's been a national spokesperson and really a leader and a hero with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, who is an organization who spearheaded the national plan to end Parkinson's disease that you and your listeners can reach out to your senators and try to help pass this year. So I had a rare opportunity, and I actually just had ankle surgery myself and a few back surgeries, which unfortunately didn't work. I wish I had met you before and you're in my area for the back, but I saw it as an opportunity. All of a sudden, a friend told me that he's going to be there. And I thought, what the heck? This is once in a lifetime. And I didn't know how well he is because I know in some of his organization they have big galas, but he hasn't been there the last 3 years due to Parkinson. So he's, unfortunately, he's fighting it, but if we don't hurry with this cure, it's a tough battle. So I was able to meet with him, and they give the rules: don't touch, don't talk, don't do anything. And luckily, I'm
Mhm.
an officer, and I'm pushy. So I was able to walk up to him, and if you see here the band, we have the Together for Sharon band in memory of my mother. And I just was able to, for a few minutes, tell him that he's in our thoughts. We love him, and we thank him for all that he does. And I told him about Together for Sharon. It's in memory of my mother. So I left that, and I saw he wasn't doing well. I don't know if it was different depending on the medicines and things, but he, did respond and talk for a minute. I went to the bathroom and I kind of fell apart a little. I'm 6'2", 200-pound police, but fell apart because I looked at him and he means a lot to so many. But I saw my mother in a way in him, and I
I
hate
was
that
gonna
he.
tell you. I was gonna ask you that. Did you see mom in him because he was like trying to fight it and everything?
I hated that
Mhm.
he has to struggle, and then it brings me again to the 600 or thousands of people I've been honored to come to know in the last few years who also are fighting the disease. I mean, I have three friends very close that we do a podcast together. It's the first podcast I've seen that has brings caregivers and people with Parkinson's together, and we just have conversations. And there are many nights I don't sleep thinking about all the other people who have to go through this horrible disease. And again, I could still get it, and anyone can. Obviously, I'm optimistic we'll have a cure. But togetherforsharon.com was just founded by me, my wife, family, to really just remember my mother and my journey as her caretaker. I thought maybe like five people would see it, and that would be it. Ironically, the other day, there's a little counter on the page I didn't realize, and it said there've been over 30,000 people in the last few months just visiting, and that's like kind of touching. It means that every one of those people knows about my mother, but also I started sharing other people's journey, the 600, and we'll probably be putting it in a book in the future. But if you click on Together for Sharing interviews, you'll be able to see now what that does is brings the awareness. But there's so many people have come to me now and emailed me and said, I want to let you know I was on your site for 10 hours, which I don't want them to be. And they were just inspired because they felt alone, and now they know they're not. So that's why we do it. The website also has a lot of things where you can donate to other organizations. It has page for partnerships where I've worked with many great organizations. It's just all there in one place for people. Everything's completely free. There's no catch. And the main goal, again, is my message is really that you're never alone, and that there's people like me and you and all your listeners who are going to be out there fighting until we have a cure for Parkinson's disease.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much, George, again for stepping up your game. I know you're, like I said, you're a very busy man, and for going above and beyond. A lot of people will just do, okay, I want to remember mom. Let me just create this video. Let me just create this album, like a photo album and stuff. And here you are, stepping. You're telling people that they are not alone, and that's very important. And like what Michael J. Fox is doing, like what you said, he's standing up. The more awareness that we have, the better. And look, I mean, Alzheimer's is actually much bigger than, and then here comes Michael J. Fox promoting, not promoting, talking about Parkinson's, and he had Parkinson's, and boom,
Yeah.
Parkinson's. There are so much programs now for Parkinson's for the therapy world or the medical world. You got the LSVT, you got the Rock Steady, and Alzheimer's is kind of, where are the programs for Alzheimer's? Where are the fundings for Alzheimer's? Because just because Michael J. Fox, promoted and showed to the world. Hopefully, Bruce Willis and his family talk about the dementia, because that's what he has, I think, right now. FTD, frontotemporal, and hopefully, it's creating more awareness. And I think Tipa Snow is also in court. I don't. Do you know Tipa Snow, George?
I did an interview. I
So
interviewed her
yeah,
on my website. It's amazing.
Tipa Snow is coordinating with Bruce Willis's family, and actually they're consulting, and then hopefully we can get more awareness on that side too. I'm not competing, George, with but I'm just saying the more
Yeah,
awareness for this specific diseases, the better we are.
it's interesting.
So
It's interesting you say that because I've actually reached out to many people, and there are still people, I won't name names, but they're pretty famous that just don't want to talk about it yet. One
that's
is a
true.
very famous comedian, another was an actor, and I actually spoke with his wife. She actually was wondering what I was talking about. Like she didn't understand why we're, coming out and talking about awareness. So I kind of left it at that. But we still need everybody involved. I recently reached out to Ozzy Osbourne's son, Jack. So we'll see if he
Hmm.
responds. Because Ozzy, unfortunately, is a legend, but fighting Parkinson's, and they're a very great family. But we don't just need. My goal today, also coming on, was that I really need to reach people who do not have Parkinson's and people who are not Parkinson's caregivers. Because again, unless we reach the whole world, we're going to be further from a cure. I feel if we do reach everyone and more people are aware that this is going to end it. And I often joke, my daughter's own, she was 6 at the time. My mother was struggling. Remember one specific example, which was crushing. We were sitting on a Sunday morning with my mother and my daughter, and my mother just started hugging the pillows and saying how much she loved my daughter, her granddaughter, Brooke. And she looked at me like she didn't know what to do, my daughter. I didn't know what to say, but it was the dementia and the setting. And so, I want to do a kid's book someday because I had trouble explaining Parkinson's to my kids. But so that was one specific instance. But, we have to talk about these things. I'm actually publishing a book soon about our journey. And that one year, that was a dark year for me, but I wrote a journal and I wrote everything from when I was sad, mad, happy, angry, and it's all going to be in there. But I'm surprised too, like you mentioned earlier about male caregivers, that I was shocked. I've been asked to be a big guest speaker at an event coming. It's literally just male caregivers, and kind of didn't even think of it till she mentioned it and you, that there's the epidemic of male caregivers. And when I was also bring back one more memory, when I was there with my mother and the hospice nurse came and they pulled me aside and said, you're doing an amazing thing taking care of your mother. And to me, I was shocked because I'm like, why? It's my mother. I would never let her fight this alone. And they said most kids do put them in the home and they're gone, like you mentioned. And my mother was always at her home. We never put her in a home. But I don't, it's different for everybody. I had the situation where I could do that, but she made me swear to her. But there were days where I was going to do it. I couldn't take it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want, you get angry, you get sad, frustrated, mad. But at the end of the day, you don't want to regret anything. So I'm glad even to the last day. Unfortunately, we bought a big house to move her in with us. Part of me is like, I don't know if I could have taken it because, she was bad at that point. But then the other part of me was, it's sad because even when I came to meet you today, I walked by that room and, she never was able to meet, to make it. So it's kind of a constant reminder every day of what Parkinson's can do to any family. And I feel that if we don't keep speaking out and fighting, we're not going to end it. And I think that, again, with your help and your audience, that we will, as a family and a team, because we're all in this together, someday soon end Parkinson's. And togetherforsharon.com, I'll be up there. But I thought a few times, I'm going to get old soon, and maybe my kids will continue it on. But then the other part of me said, "Wait, I don't want them to have to. I want this to end. I want there to be a cure." So that's my major dream and goal.
Well, you're setting a good example, George, because what your kids are seeing, how old are your kids?
Now
Well,
they're six. They're six. When you have three, forget
see,
that.
they're
Three,
still young. They're seeing you,
9 and
you know,
6, 7.
they're seeing you how you took care of grandma, and they will do that to you too. I'm gonna tell that to you now. If they're seeing how you take care and treat your wife, your mom, your dad, they're gonna take care how you do that too, and it's very important. And just gonna tell this out there too. There are a lot of people out there. They have bad experience with their parents, and not all are pretty like George on their experience with their parents. But time will come. You will have to learn how to forgive and let go. And I know there's a difference between forgiveness and forgetting, but time will come. Your parents will really need your help, and now is the time for you to step up. You may not be able to do it financially. You can do it physically. You may not do it physically, do it financially. You may not be able to do it financially and physically. How about doing it emotionally? That's the goal. It's the helping is not at all about physical, financial. You can also do it emotionally and be nice and put a smile on someone else's face. Just doing reminiscing therapy. There's what you call reminisce therapy when it comes to people who have Parkinson's and dementia. Just giving them a smile. So speaking of that reminisce therapy, George, uh, I don't know if you have this at your home. I have this in my clinic. It's uh, it's called table topics. And then every time a patient comes in my office, they would ask random, hey, Dr. Mike, what are you doing? They will come in here. They're doing therapy. They're in the gym. And I said, before you ask me a question, pick a card. And it's just random stuff, you
Right.
know. So I'm going to ask you that, George. I'm going to
I
make
can't.
this,
You'll have to
I'm
pick.
going to, of course, you can't pick it up yourself, but I'm going to pick one for you and then you answer this. All
Sounds
right.
good.
So just
I've been,
random stuff here. Just
I've
one
been on this
card.
spot before.
All right. See?
Well,
So there.
my
So this,
favorite, yeah, I'll make it positive and negative, but my favorite thing in the world is the Sandals Resort. So my wife, we've been to like 10 of them around the Caribbean and kind of just forget life for a minute. But even towards the end, unfortunately, my mother's life, we had made a trip and we couldn't cancel
Mhm.
and we went, but she was calling me 24/7 because of the delusions and hallucinations. And
Yeah.
I tried to rush back to get to her. So unfortunately, now we go and it's, I'm always kind of reminded of that moment. But, like you just mentioned, I thought it was an incredible point. That's why I love these talks because everyone has such different perspectives and they're all, so positive. But trying to bring even a moment of happiness to any individual you're taking care of is important. And I was lucky because I did have the only support, which was amazing, was my wife. My wife and my mother were best friends. You always hear the stories that the families don't like each other, but I got lucky with that. And my wife, during the last year, tried to do anything she could, even to make my mother feel happy or beautiful.
Mhm.
She would bring in, like, I'm not we're guys, so I don't know much about, but she brought in like the haircut person, the stylist, the pedicure, the manicure,
Oh
and
yeah. You got to
my
make
mother.
them feel good.
My mother was too
Mhm.
sick some days, but that was something, little things that really meant a lot. So anyone listening, if you can do things like that, just so she could forget, at least my mother could forget what she was fighting, even for a moment, was a mental world.
There you go. There you go. See? Oh no, you know what? I want to go back here, George.
Sure.
So uh, I bought this in Amazon. It's called Table Topics for Grandparents and Grandkids. And did you ever took a video of your mom?
Yeah, actually, the last year I documented a video and film my mother, but I won't share them because that's not how I
Yeah.
wanted her to be remembered. I did it
Yeah.
more for medical science if they ever needed it.
Yeah.
But the journal, I will share the journal and the book coming out. But yeah,
There
the
you
video
go.
is too sad.
So
Sadly.
unfortunately, it was too late, right? But
Yeah, we
the
do.
goal, yeah,
Yeah, there's one thing. If you go to togetherforsharon.com and you scroll to the bottom, there's one quick story. I played guitar my whole life because I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and there was always winter storms and
hmm
couldn't leave the house. And my mother was amazing enough to give me guitar lessons. Well, I'm in Florida now, but I grew up in New York, and they used to take me to Broadway. Her favorite show is Cats and the song Memory.
hmm
Well, we tried the guitar therapy, and some days it was too hard, but thankfully, in a way, the last week before she passed, I was honored enough to be able to play guitar on video. We recorded it with the
hmm
guitar therapist. And if you scroll down to togetherforsharon.com at the bottom,
I
you'll
saw
see
that.
that we played the video. But my mother, it was the last time she ever spoke, but she said thank you and she loved it. So that was one of
Wow.
the memory that you kind of mentioned, I brought up. And that's how important music is, how important therapy, and how important memories are. Because as a kid, she took me to see Cats on Broadway, and we got to see them sing Memory. So that was some memory, a memory that I'll never forget, and it's up there for the public too.
There you go. Memories, ladies and gentlemen, that is very important. I hate when my wife takes pictures, but I love it when I see it pop up in my Facebook memories because we've been there. I remember this. I hate it when during that time, right? You're like, oh, let's take pictures, blah, blah, blah. Let's take videos. Like, I don't want to take pictures. And then, but when it comes back in the pictures and memories in my Facebook, it's like, oh gosh, I wish we took more pictures. But going back to the video, I like what you did there. But here's my
Thank
challenge to the rest of the people who are watching. Obviously, there's one lady in our Facebook group. She's been documenting her mom's journey too. But while your mom and dad is still alive and healthy and can answer, buy this. I mean, I don't. This is not mine. I just bought it on Amazon. And do a question and answer with your mom and dad. And why? Why am I encouraging you to do this? Because I didn't do that to my mom and dad. All right. I I wish I recorded my dad. I knew he was passing away, and I left. I had my camera with me, but I said, "Oh, I'm going to come back after a week. I'll record it when he's back." And he passed away, and I wish I recorded that video at least. You know what? The only video or recording I have is a voicemail, and I haven't deleted that voicemail that he left me when he was still alive. So if you are right now watching in our Alzheimer's group or Jerihab group, record your loved one. And here in our clinic, George, I'm encouraging our patients, our clients, to come to me and we record the video, wherein I ask them like 3 questions and we just record it. No, 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 nothing, no intentions, no. We just record it, ask them, and then we give that to the family member. And hopefully someday when they need it, when they want to reminisce it, they have at least a memory for their loved ones. And I did that to some of our patients, and it pops up in my Facebook memory, and I send it to their family member, and they just appreciate it. Okay, enough of me. Let's go back to you, George. Where can they find you? What's your website and everything like that, sir?
Yeah, I just want to thank you and your audience again for giving me this opportunity. I do feel we're all family in this fight, and it shouldn't end here. We'll hopefully, keep in touch, and I'll add this to my website, but it's togetherforsharon.com. And again, we have just a lot of different resources. There's interviews. There's now becoming a life of its own. We almost have our own TV station with all the podcasts I've done and our podcast. I have my own podcast now. It's called Q&A with Sharon's son. I actually interviewed a United States congressman the other day on the national plan to end Parkinson's and speaking with the governor, a few senators, but it's very important, even political. And the nice thing, it's bipartisan, so none of this nonsense with the fight. Everyone is literally in it together. So I just wanted to leave our talk today with something and include you, of course, but we love you, we support you, we care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I will advocate, and so will Mike. So we'll advocate together, and our voices are so much stronger. And I'm just getting started. I always say that because it's every day feels like you're getting re-energized and restarted, even though some days you might be tired, burnt out, and drained. You got to think of others, and I think of all those individuals, the families, the individuals diagnosed, and really pushes me to just not never stop fighting till we have a cure for Parkinson's disease and dementia and also Alzheimer's. So again, I send my love and support, and I'm always there for every one of you. So thank you again for your time today.
George, thank you very much. I appreciate you. But before I let you go, ladies and gentlemen, all right, before I let you go, always remember the word fast, FAST, letter F. Find people that will bring out the best in you because you are the average of the five people you hang out with. So who are you hang out with? That's going to be you. I know Parkinson's and dementia is not contagious, but today I hang out with George. I feel like I want to be George and advocate really for what happened to her mom, right? Find people that will bring out the best in you. Next letter is letter A. Take action. All this stuff that we're doing is not going to do me good. It's not even going to do George good if you don't take action. We're doing all this for free. We don't get paid to do this, right? And George is really literally advocating for his mom. All right, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, whatever. Find something that brings back the passion in you, your purpose, your passion, and everything will follow through. He's teaching. He's a lawyer and he's got all this stuff going on, but he's still doing it because that's his passion. All right. So take action. Next letter is letter S. Share and subscribe. The more shares, the better. Share and subscribe. Sharon. Together for Sharon's website and podcast, and of course, shoot for the moon. If you keep shooting for the moon, you're gonna miss it, but you're gonna be landing with the stars. The more shoot, the more failures that you get, the closer you get to the goal. And last but not least, is letter T is teach it. Why? Because when you hear it, you forget. When you see it, you remember. But when you're actually teaching it, you're actually understanding it more, and that's what George is doing. He's teaching us how to understand Parkinson's and everything. Again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. George, any last parting wisdom before I let you go?
No, I just want everyone to know you're never alone. So don't just sit back. Always keep fighting. Keep exercising. Keep seeing Dr. Mike, and keep smiling because a smile goes such a long way. And know that there's people like us out there fighting for you. And I'm never going to stop till we find a cure.
All
Thank you.
right. Amen. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Be awesome. Be great. Be excellent. We'll see you again on the next episode of our Jerry Hab Show. Good night.